Welcome to the BC Search and Rescue Association's AdventureSmart Expert Webinar Series. Tonight, it's Olympic speed skater, cyclist, and avid recreational thru-hiker, Clara Hughes.
Connection fuels Clara Hughes. Whether on the Olympic stage, hiking long-distance trails around the world within the stillness on a healing path, or speaking in front of thousands of people, deep connection with place, space, self, and others is her ultimate focus. In her intimate keynotes, Clara explores the power of movement to change lives. She candidly shares her experience living with depression to inspire audiences to face their fears, find their voice, and become the champions they're meant to be. Clara has a few accolades under her belt. She's the only athlete in Olympic history to win multiple medals in both summer and winter games. She served as Team Canada's flag bearer, if some of us do remember, at the 2010 Vancouver Olympic Games. She's the founding spokesperson for Bell Let's Talk. She's awarded the International Olympic Committee's Sport and Community Trophy. She's been honored with a star on Canada's Walk of Fame. She's been inducted into Canada's Sports Hall of Fame. She's also a member of the Order of Manitoba and an officer of the Order of Canada. And she was named an Olympian for life in recognition of her making the world a better place by promoting the Olympic values on every stage in her life. We welcome Clara to our virtual stage, our BC AdventureSmart stage. And in her effort to lead a life in motion, Clara has completed the Triple Crown of long distance hiking. It's one of the main reasons we invited her here tonight: the Pacific Crest Trail, the Continental Divide Trail, and the Appalachian Trail, and continues to this day to find deep meaning in outdoor adventure pursuits. Thank you, Clara, for coming to our stage, and we really look forward to your presentation. The stage is all yours.
Thanks so much, Sandra. Thank you, Scott. And thank you, everybody, for showing up tonight, for coming in and spending time on the trail and in this adventure. And I'm excited that you've decided to walk with me tonight. Thru-hiking is something that has been so impactful in my life. And it's something that continues to give me so much pleasure, so much growth, so much fun. And I'm excited to share one of my favorite trails, my backyard trail, the Vancouver Island Trail, with you tonight. And I hope I can share some stories about how I prepare, how I stay safe, and how I return home in one piece without being rescued. So far, so good. And I'm sure that I'm going to make some mistakes and say some things that I should probably learn to do better. So feel free to correct me at the end, Sandra and Scott, because I'm here to learn with everybody. I'd like to acknowledge that I respectfully acknowledge the unceded territory of the Snanaa'as people and the traditional keepers of their land. I want to say thank you for allowing me to live, work, and play on your lands. The Vancouver Island Trail passes through the territories of 49 different First Nations, and without the support from these nations, my hike or anybody else's hike would not be possible. Thank you. So, movement is my medicine. Movement is medicine for me, not on the Olympic stage. Movement was pain on the Olympic stage, whether it be winter or summer sports, speed skating or cycling. Movement for me in the form of medicine comes on my adventures of thru-hiking, of bike packing, of kayak touring with my adventure buddy, my husband, Peter. And it has been something that has given me so much in terms of my mental health in my life. I feel like everything I did in sport prepared me for thru-hiking. And if I can be quite honest, at this point in my life, I feel like every step, every thousands of those miles that I hiked on the long distance trails of North America has prepared me to embark on a healing journey that I'm on right now that has really only just begun. We're always able to learn and to grow and to find inspiration in life. And for me, movement is a form of mental health practice that continues to feed me in a positive way. So before we hit the trail, I want to bring back a few of those Olympic moments and some of the things I've done outside of hiking to your living room or wherever you may be. I have a short video to play, and then it is game on. We're going to hike the Vancouver Island Trail together. Here we go.
Remarkable, incomparable, Canadian Olympic legend. The race may be done. The story may not be done at all.
Clara Hughes has continued to write that remarkable story. After Clara's unprecedented achievement of winning multiple medals at both the Summer and Winter Olympic Games, she was awarded the medal as an Officer of the Order of Canada.
I really feel like this is just the beginning, and as long as I live, I hope to be able to reach out and share the experiences I've had as an athlete, as a Canadian, traveling this globe and representing my country.
This commitment led her to join Bell's mental health initiative, Let's Talk Day, as a national spokesperson for the cause.
I hope I can stimulate dialogue and conversation about this, and maybe I can give people the courage to talk about it themselves.
Clara's Big Ride, her cross-country bike trip, was a continuation of that effort to reduce the stigma surrounding mental illness.
The dream of a stigma-free Canada is alive. It is achievable. We can do it together. Thank you, Canada!
But her commitment doesn't end there. As a Right to Play athlete ambassador and international board member, Clara is dedicated to raising awareness and funds for Right to Play so that its programs can continue to make a difference in the lives of children and communities worldwide.
But we're in a refugee camp here in a settlement, and these kids obviously have so little, but they're engaged in play, they're learning, and they're filled with joy, and I'm sharing it with them today, and it's like really emotional, but it's so beautiful.
Clara's involvement in Right to Play shows her true passion for giving back through sport.
Did we have fun playing today?
Her story is one of dedication, inspiration, and success. Through her ongoing support of Right to Play, she continues to write another chapter.
Right to Play is so much more than just playing games, and that's what I want to go back to Canada and share. And it's absolutely changing the world, and I'm so proud to be a part of it.
All right, so that's what I used to do. And this is what I love to do. This is me at the end of the Great Divide Trail. I had just finished crossing my last glacial river. A huge grizzly bear visited my camp the night before. Thankfully, I had my food hung way high up in the tree, and I think the bear was more afraid of me than me it, and it bolted into the forest. But that smile says it all for me. That's what Thru-Hiking gives me, is a smile that comes from within. Thru-Hiking has given me, in all of these 22,300 kilometers, I had to count for this because I really had no idea. I knew it was a lot, but when I looked at that number, I thought of all the smiles, all of the joys and the pains and the suffering and the transformations that I've experienced on the long distance hiking trails. And I also want to say that you don't need to hike from Mexico to Canada or from the Canadian border to Mount Robson or the whole Vancouver Island Trail to feel this kind of stoke that you see in my face here. This is about getting outside. This is about connecting with space, place, and self, connecting with the natural world. And for me, that's a non-judgmental place where I can hug a tree and say hello to a rock, and they're just going to give me love. They're going to give me energy, and they're not going to say anything that I don't want to hear. And being in nature, even if it's in an urban green space, and taking the time to just take a few deep breaths or go for a day hike or a weekend hike, a week-long hike, a multi-month hike, whatever it is that you can do, this is something that can transform you and not change your life, because quite honestly, when you come home, you kind of revert right back to where you were before you left. But it's a moment of a pause, of a breath of fresh air, literally. And it's legitimately, I can honestly say at this point, saved my life many a time. And I will always go back to the trail. But where did this through hiking thing start for me? As an Olympian, I didn't know about bike touring or through hiking until I met this guy. And this guy is my husband, Peter Guzman. And I met Peter in Oregon 28 years ago. Shortly after we met, he let me know that he was going on a walk. And I was like, what's a walk? I'm an Olympic cyclist. Like, what is that thing that you're doing? And he told me he was flying down to Tijuana and he was going to walk. He was flying down to Cabo San Lucas and he was going to walk to Tijuana. And if you don't know the geography, that is the Baja Peninsula in Mexico. I had to look at a map and figure out where that was. And I was like, you're walking 1,200 kilometers through the desert? And he did. And along the way, he wrote me handwritten letters and shared the adventure and the people and the experiences he had. And I was hooked by everything that he shared. I was literally waiting until I quit sport so I could be total bona fide hiker trash and hike my first long distance trail. But until I could do that, I still had many decades in sport. Well, not many decades, about a decade and a half more in sport. And I had to wait and bide my time, but I would get a month in my early season training and Peter and I would always go and do some kind of adventure. I would put in 100+ hours of training in the high altitude mountains and have an adventure that took me out of my day job as an Olympic athlete and allowed me to get fit and strong and fresh and clear in my mind, in my heart, in my spirit, and in my body, and prepared to try to win more Olympic medals for Team Canada. So thank you, Peter. His trail name is Windwalker. My trail name is Redfeather, and we're quite a team on trail. The only way out is through. I love this quote as a through hiker because it basically means no matter how bad you feel, no matter how tired, how wet, how dirty, how smelly you are, as long as you keep walking, you will get there. I also love this quote because it says a lot about the healing path that a person like me and many of us walk when we're struggling with our mental health and we're trying to find a way and everything seems so dark and it seems so impossible. The only way out is through, and it means you never give up and you let people in. And just like hiking a trail, nothing is done alone. And when you can let people into your heart and you can let them help you, you find that way through, and you just have to keep trying. This trail tonight I want to share is the Vancouver Island Trail. I've lived on Vancouver Island for 3 years, just over 3 years. And when Peter and I moved here, I found out about this trail and I was like, I have to hike it because this is my new backyard. And what better way to get to know your new home than to walk it? So I walked this rather large island in the Pacific. It's about 800 kilometers. I started down in Victoria at Clover Point, and I hiked all the way to Cape Scott and then came out on San Joseph Bay on the North Island. And it was quite an adventure. Here I am. I started in the early spring. It was freezing cold and I had no hiking fitness. I did no preparation physically for this hike and I paid dearly for it. Because the first part, walking through the city, was concrete and it shredded every muscle fiber in my legs. I literally walked through the city and by the end of that first day was limping, was gingerly walking on my feet and on my quads. Everything hurt so much. And I did not feel better until I stopped and ended the first segment of the hike, which took me to Port Alberni when I had to stop because there was too much snow in the mountains. So lesson number one, try to do some physical preparation for your hike. Your legs, your body, your mind, and your spirit will thank you for it. But that is my through hiking smile. I'm walking on the concrete. I'm in pain. I don't care because I am on trail. There were cherry blossoms blooming everywhere. And on day one, the first of many days of rain started. I bring a few different things when I hike, when it comes to hiking in the Pacific Northwest or anywhere where there might be rain. On this hike, I used a poncho and umbrella combination because we all know when you get wet and if it's cold and if it's windy, you're at risk for hypothermia. For me, I get too hot when I'm wearing a rain jacket, so I like to have the airflow underneath of the poncho, which actually makes me look like a walking marshmallow, but I don't care because I'm on trail and it's not a fashion show. But it goes over my pack and it also acts as a pack cover. So it's a pretty great piece of gear. And mine so dirty and kind of old, but still really functional. At this point, it looks like garbage, but it costs about $210 US because it's made of Dyneema and it weighs like 4 ounces. Pretty incredible piece of gear. So I walked out of the city into the forest, and seeing the old forest, the stumps of the forest that were, and the second and third growth forests. And then ultimately taking my first break. I was so tired because, like I said, I had no fitness. Even when you've been an Olympian, the moment you stop training, you lose everything. So you have to build up again from the very bottom. And that's what I was doing on the first part of this hike. I chose to bring a hammock tent on this hike. It was my first time using this setup because I thought, I'm going to be in more urban areas. I didn't camp in the city of Victoria because I thought it was safer to go to a hotel. There's many people who are living unhoused and they're living in their territory. And I felt like I was moving through their territory. And just to respect everybody's space, I made sure that I was safe and I wasn't impeding on anyone's territory. But the moment I got out of the city, I dipped into the forest, and this was my first camp. I'm not totally sold on the hammock tent, but it was an interesting experience. First of all, it's colder because you're off the ground. Secondly, it should be really comfortable because you're kind of like hanging in a cocoon, but I made the mistake of bringing my sleeping pad when really you need an underquilt for it that keeps you warm, because when you have a sleeping pad in there, every time you move, it literally pops up the side. And I barely slept for 13 days, but it was an interesting experiment. I'd be curious in the comments if anyone's used a hammock tent and if you actually like it. And I made my way up to the Cowichan Valley Trail up by Shaunavon Lake on the rail to trail. And of course, one of my favorite hiking foods is potato chips. Anyone that knows me on Instagram knows that I cycle through the flavors. Dill pickle happens to be one of my favorites. Ketchup's a close second. This day, I think I had honey Dijon. Yeah, it was the first of many bags of chips for this hike. I made my way north, walking on the trestles that had been restored for the hikers and the bikers and the wheelers and everybody that's human-powered moving through here. It's pretty cool to be on this old railroad bridge and see just how high up it was. It was such a great way to get to know this new place that I was calling home. And that's the thing when you're walking. When you're walking, you see everything, you feel, you smell, you hear everything, and you take things in a different way. And getting to know Vancouver Island this way is something that I will never forget. So the rain began falling again, and there you can see my dirty, expensive piece of hiking gear, my white poncho with my hood up. And I had my umbrella, a little, very light, I think it weighs 3 ounces from Snow Peak, a little backpacking umbrella that kept me dry. I was never cold. I was never too wet. And the poncho acts as a skirt, so it kept me really, really dry underneath. Here's Cowichan Lake. I walked 60 kilometers on the dirt road beside Cowichan Lake, and every car that went by me stopped and asked if I wanted a ride. They're like, where are you going and what are you doing? And I'm like, no, I'm hiking the island. And nobody had heard about the Vancouver Island Trail. And I'm so stubborn. I love to connect my footsteps. And I was like, no, really, I'm good. And they'd be like, no, get in, seriously. It was pretty funny. It was a little bit embarrassing, but really fun. I saw elk and then the beautiful sun setting on the lake. And one of the things I wanted to mention as well, when you're hiking in the rain or the snow, adverse conditions, you're trying to manage your body temperature, you're trying to not get wet. And I always make sure before I get out of my tent that I have all of my food organized. I have my hydration organized, because the last thing you want to do is in a torrential downpour, stop and have to get your pack off and find your food that's buried in the bottom. It's really all about strategy and preparation. And when you can fuel yourself on a hike and keep your glucose levels high, you'll have a better walk. You'll have energy all day long and be ready to go the next day. You're not going to bonk. You're not going to go cross-eyed and become delirious. That you do not want that. You won't even be able to see your SOS button on your inReach if that's your state of body and mind. Just joking. Don't ever get too hungry on the trail. But I also use electrolytes. One of the things I use, particularly when I'm hiking in the deserts, I've hiked through the Mojave, the Sonoran, and the Chihuahuan Desert. I've hiked through Death Valley in the heat of that below sea level. desert space, and I always bring really good quality electrolytes, and then I bring the little fizzy tabs of electrolytes and I mix them and I use them throughout the day. And I know if I can keep my electrolytes at a good level, I'm not at risk of serious health risks that can lead to death. Another thing that I do, just this isn't a desert hike, but I want to throw it out there. When you're hiking in extreme heat, a lot of people only think about the heat outside of their body. As an athlete, I had to manage the heat when I was a bike racer, and it's really all about how you are heating up or managing your core body temperature. So I treat extreme heat as I do treat altitude. I listen to my body, I slow myself down so I don't get that overheated core that is going to be impacted by the heat around me, of course, but that's one thing I can manage. And I actually hike really, really slow when I'm hiking in the heat of the desert, and I've never overheated. I also use a sun umbrella in the desert. It's reflective, it's movable shade when you might not find any shade where you're at. So those are things that I think are really important: hydration, fueling, and making sure that you're not overheating and you're not getting cold and wet and risking hypothermia. This trail, see that yellow, that orange trail sign, and then the little orange little flash on the tree? Sometimes there was not even that. I used my navigation system on my phone with multiple backup battery packs. I was always managing how much battery power I had because I had maps with me, I had a compass, but chances of me being able to use those when I'm in the forest are slim to none. I definitely don't have those skills, and I don't know who does, but I don't have them. So I made sure that all of the navigation system that I used on my phone, by using Gaia, creating my maps, downloading my maps so that I can use them on the phone on airplane mode and use less battery power, was key. Sometimes I had no idea where the trail was, and I just turn it on and it would show me where I was at. I had downloaded the GPX points onto my Gaia, so I had the trace, generally speaking, of what the route was, and I could always see where I needed to go. So make sure that you understand clearly if you are heading into the backcountry. It is so easy to get lost and disoriented. If you are heading into the forest, you can get turned around so fast, and people sometimes are lost and never found, especially here in the Pacific Northwest. I would say don't ever go into the forest without a form of navigation that you know how to use. I don't even go, to do a nature break in the forest without making sure I have my phone in my pocket and I can use it if I don't have the service from the satellites. In terms of my phone, I can use it offline and I can get back to where I was. So be really careful. Many of these rescues happen because people get disoriented. So make sure before you step into a place that you don't know and you don't have the system to get you back out, make sure you don't take that step. It's not worth it. This is what I use. It's a mini inReach. I tether it to my phone. I have Gaia on my phone as well. So I have different layers of navigation. This is also something I use to communicate with my husband at home, so he knows where I am. I can check in with him. I don't have it tracking me where I am just because don't do that. A lot of people do, and people at home, you don't have to make it public, and I would encourage you not to, especially solo female travelers, but you can have your family seeing where you are and following your hike. And sometimes it's settling people's minds at home, letting them know where you are, and it makes them less worried, which helps you when you're on the trail. This magical forest. I remember standing here in the moss, in the trees, the trail, you can just barely see it there. I remember standing and just taking that moment and taking a deep breath and taking it all in and feeling the energy of this magical place. I thought there were going to be gnomes creeping out from behind the rocks and little fairies fluttering about. It was such a magical space. And I wanted to share this video just to remind you that when you are out in nature, it's so important to have these pauses. It can be so easy to be trying to get somewhere, trying to crush miles, trying to make camp. And we so often bring our city and work and home minds to the trail, and we don't let ourselves unwind. We don't let it go so we can let all of this feed our inner being, our head, our mind, our body, and our spirit. And I always, multiple times a day, stop and just listen to what the forest and the wind and the waters and the land around me is trying to say. It often tells you some beautiful secrets, gives you encouragement, and just makes you feel good. And the land comes in all different forms. When you're out on trail, you see how we all use the land. You see clear cuts, you see landslides, you see floods, you see everything, and you don't just see it, you feel it. And I think through hiking is something particularly special because you gain that connection to the earth, and you really feel when it's healthy, you feel when it's suffering, when it's struggling, and you see the impact of every single one of our lives on the land. And it's always a lesson for me that I bring home, and I reevaluate how I'm living, what I'm using, and how I can maybe live in a less invasive way to the land. Many creek crossings, I never take my shoes off. It's not even worth it. I wear wool socks. I usually wring them out on the other side, but I hike in trail runners because they dry out fast. I've never had any problems on any trail or any mountain, however rugged. Hiking in what I like to hike in, ultra lone peaks. I have big feet. They serve me well in speed skating and cycling, and they serve me well on trail. And these have really big toe boxes, so I never get blisters. I wear my hiking shoes a size big because my feet always swell. There's always downhills. And if you wear hiking shoes or boots that fit, you will guarantee lose your toenails. So get them a half size or even a full size too big. And I'm a big proponent of trail runners for hiking, but that depends on the load. If you're carrying a really big, heavy pack, you'll want to wear a heavier boot that has more ankle support. But if you're lighter weight or even medium weight, trail runners are, I think, a really good way to go. Oh, and on I go north. Here you can see I have all my gear lying out. Literally, whenever there's any sunshine and you have anything wet, no matter what you're doing, you stop and dry your gear out. And when you take that time, you're more comfortable at night. You're at less risk of getting cold, getting wet, and life is just better with a dry sleeping bag and tent. So this is called the hiker yard sale, and I've done it all over North America. There was snow on the trail. And then this is an example of the yet to be fully bona fide actual trail, Vancouver Island Trail, but I kind of liked it. You really had to keep your head alert and be always on alert because I would get off trail so easily. And then all of a sudden I'd be like, where's the trail? Where am I? And I would look for one of these orange ribbons, and I'd do a little dance whenever I found one. Food on the trail, I didn't bring a cook stove on the first part. That is really a personal thing. I think it's really important to know how your body works, what your body uses best as fuel. I tend to bring a lot of whole foods. I even have arugula, avocado, cheese. I think there's probably butter in the sandwich. And for sure, I had some chips on the side. But really, think about what fuels your body. And when you're hiking, really think about what energy you're getting from your food. A lot of people still eat a lot of processed foods on trail. I don't particularly like to do that. I tend to carry a little bit heavier food and lighter gear because food is happiness and food is love. And I love the trifecta of fat, butter, olive oil, and cheese. My theory is if you put those three things in anything, it's going to taste really, really good. I don't count the calories and plan calories that way because I've hiked enough that I know how much I need. But any new hiker, it's really worth looking at energy expenditure, how much food you think you're going to eat in a day, and then really planning to have a little bit extra just in case. I always have an extra dinner or two just in case. You never know what can happen. You can get sick, you can get injured, and sometimes you can ride it out and hang out in your tent for a day and then be okay. So always plan for the unexpected. Have food you like to eat. Hiking a trail is not a time to go on a diet. You should just be out there and just embrace your body, see how strong your body can get, all shapes, all sizes. I have seen incredible hikers that come in all forms, and I love the trail because the trail accepts everyone as they are. And I celebrate my trail by eating the best food, and it fuels me for the journey ahead. These forests I walk through, there's an old Vancouver Island Spine Trail sign. That's the sign before the Vancouver Island Trail became what it is now. You can see the old, big, beautiful tree stump and the very young forest around it. Like I said, you really feel the land when you're out there. And then you feel the human elements as well. There's hunting seasons. And if this were a hunting season, I would have a bright orange hat. I would have something bright orange on my pack. And most importantly, I would use my voice. I would use my ability to project my voice to let any hunter know that I'm there before they get startled. There are many accidents that can happen with firearms, so I'm all about awareness. I never hike with earbuds because I want to hear my surroundings. I also want to hear the ground under my feet. I love that rhythm and the crunch and the different sounds of the different pine needles or gravel or rocks, whatever under my feet. It's like this rhythm that I connect to, like the drum that maybe you saw in the introductory video when I was in Africa. And I've learned from many friends in the First Nations communities that that's actually the heartbeat of Mother Earth. So sometimes when I'm walking, I'm like, maybe that's the heartbeat of Mother Earth. And it's a beautiful thing to connect to. There's my little backpack. Here's my hammock tent. Another beautiful camp. Oh, it was so beautiful on this lake. And that is the early morning sun. What I love to do is to just take a few breaths and to welcome a new day and the miracle of the sunrise, especially in the Pacific Northwest. And just to set the tone for the day that I'm not in any rush. I'm going to get somewhere. I don't know where. And I'm the luckiest person on earth to be doing this walk today. Whenever I'm hiking, I think about all the volunteers who put time into these trails with these little bridges, ladders, little signs. The Vancouver Island Trail still has a long way to go, and I kind of like that it wasn't finished and there were just random signs like this all over the place. This was a river crossing I was super stressed about. I was like, is it going to be raging? Am I going to be like, how am I going to get across this thing? And I got there and it was like knee deep. So the lesson is go and see. Don't get stressed until you go there. And then you assess the situation. You can walk upstream. You can walk downstream. Always look ahead if you're going to do a dangerous river crossing. There's many different techniques. I won't go into that. I always have hiking poles to have those 3 points of stability. They also act as my tent poles when I have a tent. But most importantly, look ahead. If you have any risk of taking a swim, of getting knocked down, where are you going to go? Where is the river going to carry you? Are there logs around the next turn that you can see that you could get pinned under? Then that's not a good place to cross. I always have my pack undone because the chance of getting pinned and pinned by your pack could be great. I want to be able to get out of my pack. And if it's a really dangerous river crossing, I have a safety survival kit inside of my jacket, zipped up, that's waterproof, that has a cook pot, that has a fire starter, that has a head net, bug dope, water purification tablets, all of the things that I can use, the very thin ground sheet, all of the things that I can use while, if I need a rescue because I've lost my pack and I'm in the middle of nowhere, I can at least be comfortable. That was the Great Divide Trail, but this is the Vancouver Island Trail, and I didn't have to worry about any of that. And this was not the nicest camp, but you know what? It didn't matter. It was cold, it was frosty, and I remember thinking, I am going to be in Port Alberni tomorrow night. I was on the Alberni Inlet. My husband, Peter, came and picked me up because we had to go back to Canmore, Alberta and sell our house and finally move to the island. And there was much snow up in the Beaufort Range to go any further anyway. It was below freezing this night and I cowboy camped, but I always have my emergency blanket with me just in case of hypothermia or anything like that. But I also use it when I need to warm up my body in my sleeping bag, because when your body's warm, you warm up all the down and the feathers in your sleeping bag. And so I kind of put it like, over myself like a taco inside of my sleeping bag, and it warms my body up. As soon as I feel warm, before I start sweating, I take it off, and then my body heats up my sleeping bag, and I slept so cozy this night. There's all the frost, there's the Alberni Inlet, the beautiful moss, the arbutus trees, and the beautiful cherry blossoms in Port Alberni. I walked through town, got to the other side, got a chocolate and some treats along the way, and stopped at the train trail. 2 months later, and this is my point, there are so many different ways to hike a trail. You don't have to do the whole thing at once. I've met people that have had a multi-year or decade experience of hiking something like the Pacific Crest Trail. Not everybody can make the time to do it all at once, and not everybody wants to do it all at once. So for me, this was a 2-month break where I went home, got some business done, came back to the trail, and my buddy Nick Boulding joined me for the next 11 days of the hike from Port Alberni to Strathcona Park Lodge, where he was born and raised and his family still runs it. It was so fun to have a hiking buddy. Peter dropped us off. Nick and I not only share a love for adventure and a love for all flavors of potato chips, but Nick is trained in all wilderness first aid as a river guide. He has mad skills, and it was so fun to be out there with him and to learn even more tips and tricks to be safe outdoors. We did camp on a railroad track, but it's decommissioned, so don't worry about that. We were not being unsafe, but it was really beautiful to go up into the Beaufort Range with Nick. This was just at the tail end of the heat dome that happened, and it was hot. So we were just getting ice and snow and putting it in the back between our shirt and our skin, in between our pack. I was putting it in my sleeves and my hiking gloves. We were swimming everywhere. I had taken a dip, and there goes Nick. There were so many bugs. I had my head net, so I was comfortable, and we had so many beautiful camps. At one point, we saw the Strait of Georgia and the Alberni Inlet. We saw both sides of the island from the ridge of the Beaufort Range. And the Beaufort Range is what I look at from my house here. And it's just amazing to look up at those mountains and to know what it's like to be on top of them. There I am cooling off. Why take your clothes off when you don't have to? But I did keep my feet dry that time. It was rugged. You can see the little, on the bottom left, the little tiny orange flash on the stump that marked the trail. It was a pretty intense navigation, and eventually we made our way into Strathcona Park, into those beautiful mountains. Nick and I have a lot of fun together. I brought my cook pot on this last part of the trail because Nick was going to bring his, and I definitely did not want to have food envy. So I was like, I'm not going to smell you cooking your food and me eat my like dry tortillas. So I was pretty happy. I had broccoli with me, and we had some really good food. This is an example of the trail. It was at times not a trail, just a big bushwhack. And we were getting like whacked by Devil's Club and thorns all over us. But we had a good time, and we kept our cool. And we just said, you know, the only way out is through. We just have to keep going. There were beautiful lakes, beautiful mountains. And what a great way to spend time with a friend, to reconnect with each other, with ourselves, and with this beautiful natural world on this island we call home. And there I am in my marshmallow poncho. I don't get any happier than that, by the way. That's like my happiness ceiling. I'm sitting in the dirt, I'm wearing a dirty poncho, and I'm shoving corn chips into my face. There's no greater happiness than that. And there's Nick with his poncho. His was a little cheap one. It got pretty ripped and torn up, but it did the job. And he was game. And this was the trail. There is no trail. And finally, we made it to the lodge, and we made it in time for dinner. We did a 12-kilometer road walk after diving off of a ridge, through clear cuts, through forests. And we were so stoked. I think we made dinner by 2 minutes. And that was the end of the trail for Nick. And for me, I continued on by myself. There's always a little bit of loneliness, a little bit of longing for your friend when you're alone again. But I found some food to eat. I found some trees to hug. And I continued along my way, managing all of the navigational challenges, the weather challenges, and just going the distance day in and day out. Another yard sale, a big, beautiful, majestic, elder, old growth cedar that I just felt was like a life source. Putting my hand on this tree made me feel like I was feeling the essence of being alive. And there's food everywhere out there. There's berries, there's mushrooms, but it's not all things that you should eat if you're hiking alone. I personally, if I'm alone, I do not foray into the wild mushroom area, because, well, you can get really sick. But I do know my berries, and these are black raspberries, and they were so good. And of course, the Wass gas station, North Island, had a really good chip assortment, and I had to get some cheesies. From Was, I made my way north on all the railroad tracks that no longer have rail cars, and all the logging roads, and then the decommissioned railroads. Water is another thing. Everybody has their method. For me, if I can get earth juice from the source, like this seep was ice cold, and I was like, I'm not filtering it. And that was my choice. Sometimes I make that choice if it seems like a really good source. I know people that only filter their water and will not drink any water if it's not filtered. I know people who don't filter their water at all. I think you're lucky if you don't get sick. I've been lucky so far. I do the best I can. I have my Sawyer filter. That's the system I use. I use a gravity system. On the left, you'll see water I got on the Arizona Trail of the hike I did that trail last fall and winter. It literally looked like Mountain Dew. And if you look at the bottom, that's how it comes through that filter. It's incredible. I've used the Sawyer filter for years now, and I've never had a problem. You have to be meticulous with where you put what and what lid goes on where. Otherwise, you'll contaminate your clean water filter and bag. But if you do that, chances are you're going to be okay. And finally, I made my way and busted my way through to the very first wild beach of the north coast of Vancouver Island. I had been waiting for this moment for the whole island walk, and when I stepped out into this magical wild space, I was looking around wondering if there was going to be a bear or an animal or maybe some orcas or humpback whales. But there was nothing but me. But maybe there were some animals in the forest, maybe a cougar looking at me somewhere. But I just remember taking in that sea breeze and realizing I was on the last leg of the hike. And when I went back in the forest, I saw this little guy, a pine marten, and he was checking me out. I look a lot closer than I am. I actually had it on full zoom. I fully respect the animals because I don't ever take videos or pictures of bears because I feel like they're going to think you're taking something out that might, put them at risk. And so I just give them space. I always yell. My bear safety is bear spray, an air horn, a mini air horn, and my voice and my common sense and my ears and my hearing, knowing my surroundings, yelling every 30, 40 seconds, hey bear, yo bear, I'm here, you're there. And I just make songs. And my theory is animals are way smarter than us. And if you let them know that you're coming, they will go out of the way. They don't want to be around us dirty, smelly, two-legged through hikers. So you got to give them a chance. And I think that's the best defense. I only saw 2 grizzly bears on the entire Great Divide Trail. And that I think is because of my lung capacity as an athlete. I have good projection of my voice. I walked along the Port Hardy Airport in this mess of thimbleberries and thorns, only to come across this no trespassing sign. I was in Kwakwaka'wakw territory, and of course I backtracked and found another way. And it's really important wherever you are to respect people's property, respect the nations and the territories that you're on, because it's someone's home. And I think it's really important as a thru hiker to do that. I found more berries. I busted my way through the bushwhack from HE double hockey sticks to Shushardy Bay, and finally made my way to the beginning of the North Coast Trail. It was epic to get there. I did a 60-kilometer long road walk from Port Hardy. There I am after the bushwhack. I thought I would never be found. I had my inReach right here just so I could get it in case I fell down and couldn't get up and couldn't get to my pack. I paid my dues. I actually ended up hiking the whole North Coast Trail in 36 hours. I had good trail legs at that point and busted my way through the mud, the roots, the boardwalks, the little trams that crossed the rivers. And it was really fun being on this thing, but I didn't realize I had less weight because I was one person and I was so far shy of the other side. And then I was like, how do we get this thing to the other side? And I was a leg athlete, I'm not an arm athlete, so I was just doing everything I could to get this thing to the other side. And I got to the other side, my arms were completely blown, but it was pretty fun. These beautiful wild beaches. Look at this space. just the rhythm of the waves and the water. And unfortunately, there's so much trash on these beaches. There's a lot of organizations that are doing work, volunteer work to clean them up, but it's not all trash from overseas. There are a lot of Tim Hortons lids there as well. Again, making me think about how I use things when I come home. Bear tracks, mud, walking through miles of seaweed of all colors and sizes. It was slimy and gross, but after a while it felt kind of neat and I came to embrace it. That is the North Coast Trail. And finally I made Cape Scott, that last beautiful beach before I got there. Bear tracks everywhere. That's my end of a through hike smile. I made it safe. I made it sound. I did it. I was so stoked, so pumped. And I decided to camp one last night in this beautiful place. I pitched my tent. I had my little backpacking buddy that a friend made for me, who kind of looks like Peter. I call him Chico Pedro. He's always smiling, always has a good attitude. And I relaxed. I was not trying to be anywhere else other than where I was in that moment. And that's when the accident of my hike happened. And I'm sharing this with you because it's easy to think like, I'm done, it's all good, I can let go, I can relax. You are not done until you're safe at home. What happened to me this afternoon is I spilled boiling water on my foot from my cook pot. On the bottom, you'll see it's kind of gross, so I should have warned you about it, but that is actually my skin that bubbled up. Because I had the smallest of first aid kits, I have what I need and need what I have. I was able to wrap my foot and put multiple layers of gauze, of lotion, of bandages, of duct tape, of paper tape. And I was able to hike out the next day, 13 kilometers through mud, root, and rocks. And I got to where I was able to get a ride back to Port Hardy. So it's not over till it's over. This is my little first aid kit. On the left, you see how tiny it is, but this is all that it has in it. And I'm pretty happy with what I have. I can probably get some advice from Scott. I might need to add a few things. And I also have a repair kit. Those are the things in my repair kit. All of these little things come in handy. And the last thing I want to share with you, I hope you've enjoyed our hike, by the way. Thanks for coming along. What I want to share with you is that the trail provides. The trail provides the experience. The trail provides the exhaustion. The trail provides the way, the people, the community, the opportunity to connect with place, space, and self, to know where you've come from, know where you are, and know where you're going. The trail provides so much and has given me so much in my life. And even after all of these thousands of miles, if I can honestly say, I do feel like the Olympics prepared me for all those thousands of miles of through hiking, and all those miles on trail have prepared me to be on the healing journey that I'm on right now. The trail offers, and physical activity offers, an incredible opportunity for movement as medicine. But I want everyone here to know that it doesn't fix everything. It changes you, it leaves you with a beautiful experience, but often I've found I come home right back to myself, back to where I was. And the most important thing, whether it's in sport or trail or healing, is community. And so when you go out there, whether you're on a long distance hike or a weekend adventure or a day trip, or whether you're on a healing path with your mental health like I am, make sure that you don't try to do it alone, because even when you are alone, you're not alone. And the best things are done in community with others. Thank you so much for listening. I'm going to invite Sandra back in because we have lots to chat about and surprises to give out. That's it. Thanks.
Yeah,
Oh my
lots
goodness.
of questions too. Wow.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Clara, for sharing, for being so transparent, for taking us on that journey. We have some trail specific safety videos, but I think that is the trail specific safety video for the Vancouver Island Trail. It's quite something with that narration. There's no question. I was just sitting here with a smile on my face the entire presentation. You were infusing all of us, and I'm sure I can speak for most of us that are joining you tonight, if not everyone. But there is a lot of questions. So Scott, if you don't mind, I'll pass that to you, and we'll see what people are asking.
We'll start with a relatively quick one. How long did it take you to do, if you added up all of the days that you did the Vancouver Island Trail? How long was it?
35 days.
35 days.
Yeah.
And what was that separated? So you stopped in Port Alberni. That was your mid
Yeah, I
place?
stopped in Alberni, and then the second segment was Alberni all the way to Cape Scott and then out Sanjo Bay. Yeah, yeah. So I think it was 800 kilometers. It's many of the trails you use the Far Out app. So you have all the intel, you know how many miles you've gone or kilometers. And this trail was unknown. Like I didn't know where water was or anything. So I was always carrying more water. Also, by the way, always carry more water than you need. You should never get to a water source dry. Like I'm always like, I will always have at least a sip, even in the desert. I will never go dry. So side note.
That brings up another question. How much does your pack weigh?
Ooh, okay. Base weight, usually 12 pounds. So that's everything excluding food,
wow.
water, fuel. Yeah.
So how much in water and fuel? So like if I were to fully load you up and you, I told you you're not going to be able to get water for 15 kilometers. How much are you going to be?
Well, I would look at the temperature. I would calculate how far, how long, how much I'm going to drink, and I would have a little bit more. And that's the thing. Sometimes people load up with so much water and it's like, you have water in 10 kilometers. Like you don't need to punish your feet with all that weight. So I'm really like always calculating what I need and what I'm carrying. And but like maxed out, like if I have to do like on the Pacific Crest Trail, when I went through the Sierra, I did like the whole Sierra and further, like 250-mile stretch. And I think I did it in 7 days or 6 days. I was doing big miles, and my pack when I started was, and I had a bear canister, was about 35 pounds, which was super heavy for me. But my first hike, I carried a 70-pound backpack, 70. So like, seriously, like it's nice to have a lightweight stuff, but use what you have. Like you don't need all the light stuff to be happy. You just need to go and do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, if people were looking for that first aid kit, we do have advice on that. But I would want to point out that the number one thing you can have for your first aid kit is your brain.
Yes.
You need to go and have that training. You need to have someone tell you how to do it, because you know what? Maybe you'll run out of, I don't know, antiseptic pads. But if you have your brain, you can figure out what's your next best option. Like how can I make do without a splint, right? You need that brain. That's the one thing you need to pack for first aid, and you have to have trained it in advance. You can't train it on the fly.
Good advice, Scott. Thank you.
Rachel wants to know, how do you manage mental health when you're out hiking, especially when you've got time to yourself, you're embracing the time to not think about the things that you necessarily want to not think about, but you also want to make sure you don't distract yourself. How do you manage the mental health issues while you're on the trail?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's so individual. Like for me, it really is medicine being out there. Like I love being alone. I don't have any anxiety for it. It doesn't, like, having that time and space to clear my head opens my heart and connects me to all the energy around me. And for me, it is an amazing mental health practice. I have friends who that would be the worst thing that they could do for their mental health. So it really goes to looking at yourself, understanding what your needs are, understanding what is safe for you, what feels safe, what's a safe environment, what's a safe setting. Is it safer for you with other people? Are you more relaxed? Or who are you with as well? Like really think about, sometimes you think like, yeah, we'll get a whole gang of people. We'll have 12 of us. That would be like my worst nightmare on a thru hike, because then you have 12 people giving input for one decision. And that, in my opinion, is when you can get into trouble, and also not have an experience that allows you to connect with a place that may offer some sense of healing and clarity and quiet. So really looking at what makes you comfortable, and also looking at who you're with and how you're doing it and what the opportunities are there for you. For me, it's just being outside. If I do an overnight hike and I just sleep in my tent, I'm just like, that's the safest place I can be, is in my tent. I love it.
Do you find that while you're out on the trail that you have more energy than when you're at home, the less energy? Like, how do you manage your energy level?
I'm not known for low energy.
I couldn't tell.
I have a lot of energy, and You know, Scott, it's interesting actually right now on this healing journey that I'm on, I actually need to work at being at home. Going and knocking out a through hike has been kind of my default from sport. Sport was an outlet for me to survive a lot of, really difficult things in life, early childhood trauma. It was an outlet for me to expend so much energy that I could exhaust myself so I didn't have to feel. Through hiking, as much as it has helped me, has also been an outlet for me to exhaust myself so I don't feel. And right now, I'm working on being at home and finding that home in my body and making a connection with my body that I haven't been able to make yet in my life. It's been an incredible experience this last little while. And I can tell you, I'm learning things that I did not even know were there to be taught. And I'm excited to be on this journey and to return. I hope one day, as I've been told by the people that are helping me, they're like, one day you're going to go back to the trail and it's going to be even bigger and better and more connected than you've ever experienced because you're going to be rooted in yourself. So right now, my through hike is this healing path, and I'm walking it and experiencing it and engaging in it and being present with it and working on it here at home.
Quick question, by the way, on your backpack, that 12-pound backpack, how many liters?
It's like a 35-liter pack, I think. And it's actually Northern Ultralight out of Nelson, BC. I love supporting small companies. It's a handmade, beautiful pack, and my fanny pack is from them as well. And then I use a Durston tent from Dan Durston, another Canadian, making great gear. There are Canadian through hikers like Hiker Trashies making awesome hiking gear. And it's expensive. It's an investment and you don't need it. But if you're able to afford it, I encourage everyone to look at these Canadian companies. There's many of them, and support fellow Canadians making great gear.
I have, by the way, there's
for sure as well.
For every question that I knock off, there's 3 more that are coming in. So we're not going to get to the end of them today. I'm going to ask a couple more though.
Okay.
A person's asking about tips that you have for solo hikers. And I'm going to actually ask Sandra about that. It's going to be 2 parts, just general tips for solo hikers, and then specifically tips for solo female hikers about safety. So we'll start off with Sandra on that. Tips in general for solo hiking. I know generally the most safe from a SAR perspective is to have someone with you, that because they're there to help you if something goes wrong. But what are your some initial thoughts on solo hiking, Sandra?
That was a great segue, Scott. Thanks. And that's what I would say too. Ideally, Clara just shared an amazing story, a successful story with a little kerfuffle at the end, but it was great to know that things can happen, right? No matter how prepared you are, accidents can happen. And ideally, there's no question. I think when you have others in your group, 1, 2, or 3, I'm not a big fan either, Clara, of large groups. Things go sideways. Too many decisions, too many thoughts, too many group dynamics can really not always make your adventure. I belong to a small hiking group, or I have over the years, or I ride with some friends, and the smaller is better for me, but it's really helpful to always have someone else there. So for those listening who are getting into hiking and experiencing it at a beginner's level and throughout, ideally with others is best. Like you said, Scott, something can go wrong. We can get hurt. And let's say there's 3 of us and I get hurt. Clara can take care of communications if we were together, and Scott can take care of first aid and take care of me. So, we try to think of best case scenarios. Clara went out there with her head on her shoulders, right? And Scott talked about not forgetting to take our common sense and using our brain. That's the best thing we can start with, is that common sense.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I just realizing I'm like the worst person to be here with BC AdventureSmart and BC Sarah, because I'm like that solo hiker. But
we do recognize people do it, right?
Yeah.
We're not naive. we know people do it. And there are things that you can do to make yourself more safe.
Yeah.
If you are to go out and do that. So if any tips that you have are good.
Absolutely. And if I can give the specific to solo female hikers, and I'm going to throw this out there here to everyone. This first thing I'm going to say, when I hiked the Pacific Crest Trail southbound in 2019, I started meeting a lot of people further south, a lot of northbounders, people flip-flopping because of snowpack and everything. And so often, and it would always be a guy that would be like, oh, where are you camping tonight? And I'm by myself. And inside I'd be like, why? Like, it literally, to me, that's like, I'm in Vancouver and I stop and chat with someone on the street that I don't know. And I'm like, oh, what hotel are you staying at tonight? Like, it's just not cool. And so really, like, all of us, including me, myself, like, I'm always thinking about, okay, I don't know what this person's comfort of safety is. And there are introverted and extroverted people. And so to always think about, like, you know, let someone tell you information, don't ask for it. And as a solo female hiker, when I hiked the Appalachian Trail, I hiked the first third of it with my husband with Windwalker and the last 2/3 alone. And that crosses, it's in a big population density corridor on the East Coast. And so whenever I got to a road crossing, before I allowed myself to be seen and came out of the forest, I listened. Are there cars coming? Or is there anyone? And if there was a car coming, I waited until that car was gone out of the sound distance. So it was like, okay, there's no one there. Now I'll cross. I always cross fast. So nobody saw me exiting or entering the forest. So just things like that. Where am I camping? Is there a road nearby? Is this a party camp? You know, does it look like people come here? I'm probably not going to camp there. So it's always assessing who might come, because for me, you know, obviously being safe with food, hanging your food, having a bear canister, whatever you do for that, there's that kind of animal safety, letting yourself be heard. But human safety, for me, what concerns me the most are the two-leggeds or people. And I'm just always on high alert. And the more you're on the trail, your senses and your gut instinct are really sharp. Like, if you feel somebody is making you uncomfortable, that is not safe. And I have learned on my hikes as well, even being a solo hiker, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to talk to other hikers and say, you know what, I'm uncomfortable with this person. Can I be with you? And it is a community. The trail is a community. I've never had a problem with another hiker, if I can honestly say that. And I have asked many hikers for help and said, you know, can I just be with you? Or how are you getting to town? Because I don't know how I'm getting there and I don't want to try to get there alone. So reach out. No, like I said at the end, nothing is done alone, and people are there to help you and support you. And it also helps, I think it helps you coming back. It helps me coming back into life, because it helps me understand that I can't do everything by myself. And being helped and letting yourself be helped is a really important thing. Yeah.
That's a great tip, by the way, for people like me. I tend to be chatty. I don't know if you've noticed, and I tend to ask questions. Sometimes you don't realize that your question might make someone else feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that's why I like this when you said it, because I think I've asked someone that.
Yeah. Well, me too. And then when I'm uncomfortable, I'm like, okay, Clara, check yourself, because like that goes both ways. So we're all learning. We're all learning. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Last question. What's the next big outdoor adventure for you?
Well, I am hiking the Juan de Fuca Trail in a few weeks with a new friend that I made a couple of weeks ago, and she's done a little bit of hiking. I've done a lot of hiking, and we've both decided that when we start the trail, if we get to a tree and both of us just feel like we need to sit under that tree and we spend 3 days under that tree, we're cool with it.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that'll be the adventure, or we'll go the whole way. But my point is, it's just like, the point is being out there, having an experience, coming home safe, and just opening up your mind and your heart to everything that's around you, that, you know, living in the hustle and bustle of cities and the stress of work and family and home and just life in general, being outside is a chance to clear everything up, to brush it off, to let the plants brush you off. I've learned that from my friends in the Squamish Nation, to let the plants brush off all the stress, and you come home and it's a little pause, a little breath of fresh air, and let yourself enjoy it. So I'm going to be doing that on the Juan de Fuca Trail.
Oh, that's marvelous. I haven't done it myself. Have you, Sandra? I may have done a little bit of it.
I haven't, but that's really exciting, Clara, because we actually have a trail safety video that we're going to encourage you and anyone else listening who wants to hike it to watch that video, because it was in our top trails that have some of the most search and rescue calls on them in the province of BC. So I'm sure you'll be fine, and everyone.
I'll put it in the chat. I'll put it in the
Scott,
chat
if
in the
you
next
could,
minute.
If you could toss it in the chat, it's a great 7-minute and 10-second video that walks you right through the trail. We hiked it. We made a video for it to help people get a sense of what they're getting into, 'cause it's a little bit muddy, and a few other tips and tricks. So there you go. That's great. What a great future adventure.
Yeah.
We are at the point where we've gone long, but we're going to get everyone to stay on a little bit longer, because we're going to show you a little hint about the 3 T's of trip planning, training, and taking the essentials. And on the other side of it, we'll give away some prizes. Sound good? Okay, stick with us, Clara.
So, you want to be adventure smart. Good.
But what is being adventure smart?
Being adventure smart is really all about taking responsibility for your own safety and following the 3 T's.
Got it. What are the 3 T's?
What are the 3 T's? The 3 T's are the trifecta of outdoor safety: trip planning, training, and taking the essentials. The 3 T's can vary from person to person, activity to activity, and season to season. But here are some important ways to ensure you are prepared and safe on your next adventure. Trip planning. We could go on forever about this one. Trip planning is an essential step and one of the easiest ways we can stay safe on our adventures. This is something that should be done every time we head into the outdoors, whether for a few hours or multiple days. Trip planning can be broken down into 4 simple steps. Planning your travel route and navigation is about picking a trail or route based on its difficulty that's relative to your experience, ability, and the amount of time you have. Know your limits. Not all trails are created equal, so know the terrain and conditions. A 10-kilometer hike scrambling straight up a steep mountain is a lot different than a 10-kilometer stroll around a lake. Before you go anywhere, check the weather and keep checking it, as things can change fast. This includes wind, precipitation, temperature, and sunset times. Finally, make sure you leave a comprehensive trip plan with a trusted contact. Keep in mind, this may not be your mom or dad or best buddy. Choose someone you can count on if you were to get into trouble. A comprehensive trip plan might be as simple as sending your trusted contact a text or email with key information about your activity, or using the AdventureSmart app, which allows you to enter a detailed trip plan. Training doesn't mean being an elite athlete or being queen of the mountain on Strava. Training is a continuous process of outdoor recreation. It's about developing the necessary skills and abilities to be safe. This might include working your way up to that big summit hike, taking a few courses to expand your wilderness and backcountry knowledge, navigation and route finding courses, or even learning more advanced skills like rescue and emergency training. You have planned and trained. Now make sure you take the essentials. Taking the essentials means packing everything you potentially need to stay warm, safe, and dry if an emergency unexpectedly arises. What if you rolled your ankle or got hurt? What if you got lost and had to spend the night outdoors? Take the time and be prepared to look after yourself. So that's it. Those are the 3 T's.
That's it.
But no matter how hard you train, how well you trip plan, and how much essential gear you bring, you may still find yourself in an emergency. And that's okay. The wilderness can be unpredictable. If you find yourself in an emergency, it's important to stop, think, observe, and plan. Use that essential gear you brought to stay warm, dry, and safe, and contact 911 on your emergency communication device. Remember, search and rescue in BC is free for everyone. Remember, safety is an outcome of good trip planning, training, and taking the essentials. It's your responsibility. So let's all do our part and be adventure smart.
Awesome. Let's jump right into those prizes, Scott. I appreciate everyone's time. They've stayed a little bit late, Clara, as well. And
yeah, thanks so much.
We're cognizant of that. that was a great segue. I've seen that video 1,000 times, but it talks about the trifecta of outdoor safety, and this segues perfectly into my first question. So the winner of this prize, the first one, so you have to be quick to answer the questions. Those who haven't won a prize in the last year with us can play the game. You have to be quick to type in the answer. Scott has to have eagle eyes to watch the answers. And the first one that pops up, and it usually goes like a big stream, we will connect with you and share the prize with you. The first one is from Arc'teryx, and it's a beautiful backpack. So the question is, and I've given you a few hints there, so if you're ready, get those fingers ready. What is Clara's food trifecta? Which I absolutely love, by the way. If you could list those 3 things, any order will do, but as long as you get the 3 things.
There we go. We have a first. We have a first person.
Hey!
Marvelous.
You were listening.
So we're gonna contact you via the email that you registered with.
Thank you. The second prize we're giving away is from Reco.
Oh, we didn't answer. We didn't tell them what the answer was.
Oh, pardon me. You're right. So
Clara, did you want to tell them what the answer is?
Oh yeah, the fat trifecta.
The fat trifecta.
It is butter, olive oil, and cheese.
There you
Sorry,
go.
all your arteries.
So yummy
Perfect.
though. Oh my goodness. Each one, I tell
Right?
you. Yes.
I'll take 'em all.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And
That's
that
where
you
they
love
go.
chips. I don't know. I love you even more now that you like all these snacky things. It's just crazy. Okay. The second question is, you could win a reflector from Reco. They're an awesome sponsor and supporter of our webinars. This question is, what did Clara use to make herself into a taco? She used this to keep warm. It was the cold night. I think it was below 0 that night. She used something that we talk about that
Yeah,
everyone
we
should
got one.
carry.
Yes, an emergency blanket, which of course you throw into your backpack there. Thank you very much. We'll get in touch with you as well.
Wonderful. Last question. This is for a light source from Bright Source. These are awesome products. Actually, whoever wins this is really quite lucky. And they're also sponsoring all of our webinars this summer, which is really cool. This one I felt was a lovely phrase that Clara mentioned, and I spend a lot of time on the trails too. So do all of you who join us. I feel that this was it was almost like a hug when you said this. What does the trail accept?
Who does the trail accept?
Who does the trail accept? Thank you for rephrasing my question.
Yeah.
Marvelous.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone got that one. Everyone. That was
as
so
you
lovely.
are. Yeah.
Everyone, oh my goodness. It just, we talk about inclusivity, we talk about diversity, we talk about inviting our friends, inviting others to be a part of our circles, or being invited or participating,
Yeah.
or just being out there and silent. Like there's so many ways to be on the trails. And that was very, that was a big point for me. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Thanks, Sandra.
I have
in
one last
closing-
question, by the way, just because I was always wondering, do you ever hike with a dog or a cat or
No,
another animal?
I'm allergic to all things with fur except humans. So no, I don't. And if I could just say one thing, I noticed someone asked about ticks, and that's a big thing with Lyme disease. And I use products from Sawyer. This isn't an endorsement. I buy them. You can't buy them in Canada for whatever reason, but I use permethrin on my clothes and pack and gear and shoes. And it's good for 6 washes or 6 weeks, I think. And then I use picaridin by Sawyer. And I use the lotion, and it seriously lasts for 11 hours. Apparently it's not toxic by like DEET, but please look it up yourself. But it doesn't eat your clothes, and it's a derivative of black pepper, I think. It's incredible, but you have to buy it in the States at REI or Cabela's or whatever. Yeah.
Cool. Appreciate
In
it.
closing, thank you, Scott. Once again, what a great start. Clara, what a great way to kick off our summer. This has inspired me for the next 9 sessions. They're every Thursday right until August 1st. So this was so much fun. Learned a lot. I feel like I've been on that trail with you. I think everyone else has too. On behalf of the 3,400 search and rescue volunteers, to Clara, to Scott, to everyone who joined us tonight, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to get informed. Thank you for taking the time to learn a little bit more how you can tweak or adjust your planning for your adventures, what you're going to do, when you're going to do them, where you're going to do them, who you're going to do them with, and so that you can be ready for a safe adventure and reaching your destination. And just a little friendly reminder, that destination is home.
Every time.
Enjoy the rest of your evening. Hopefully see you next Thursday. The next one is all about camping, the Camper's Code. And again, big hugs to everyone. Thanks and have a super summer. We'll see you around, everyone. Good night.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night, everyone.